Good morning, everyone. My name is Roberto Ramirez, and I am the Assistant Division Chief for the Special Population Statistics in the Census Bureau's Population Division. I would like to welcome all of you to the United States Census Bureau headquarters. This incredible building is home to some of the nation's finest researchers who spend their days exploring ways to improve the measurement of our nation's people, places, and economy. And you are all here to help us with a key part of our work. Now, I would like to ask you all to briefly introduce yourselves. Please state your name and affiliation as we go around the room.
Sonia Judge, the President of the Amazigh Cultural Association in America.
Linda Sarster, I'm the Executive Director at the Arab American Association of New York.
So, as you have seen, MENA and the Middle Eastern and North African are commonly used terms to classify and describe this region of the world. Now, what we want to know is what you think of the term, and we have a couple of questions for you. What are your thoughts on using the term Middle Eastern or North African as a category on the census questionnaire? Do you think that the community will identify with the Middle Eastern or North African term? Are there other terms that the Census Bureau should consider using instead of the term Middle Eastern or North African? And finally, is it appropriate to use the acronym MENA or MENA when discussing this population? So please turn, if you have a question or comment, please turn your name placard on this end, and I will call on you, and we'll make our rounds like we did last time.
These questions are really helpful in terms of just, I'm pushing it back and disagreeing with in terms of that they're not helpful. I think they're very helpful because they bring the conversation in, especially, for instance, the North, I mean, someone mentioned why should white be on at the beginning, but my hesitation is also why should the Middle East be first then North Africa? Why couldn't it be the other way around? And more importantly, like as an Amazigh group who are in Chad, who are in Niger, in Mali, they don't want to be associated with the Middle East because even I disagree with Eastern Mediterranean that just completely takes North Africa, and there's a big division between North Africa and the rest of the North African continent. So I disagree with that. My suggestion would be in terms of like, I don't know how the policy with this, but just separating the two. Just because the more we get into specific, for instance, Arab, as soon as we mention one ethnic identity, then there's an open box if one wants to mention that. So I think just it'll be helpful to simplify Middle East and then North Africa and then have categorized. So, thank you.
Okay.
All right. As for the first question, should we use the term Middle Eastern or North African as a category? I would say no, because North African is not a race and it's not an ethnicity. So in not just North Africa, the whole Africa or African people don't want to be included in MENA or Middle East because they don't see themselves like that. And if we use that, it will cause more confusion in the population count and everything. And when you do you think the community will identify like the Middle Eastern or North African term? I say no, because a lot of people I know, a lot of communities do not want to be included. In Ohio, we have like in some hospitals the term like Middle Eastern, and people do not see themselves. They're not white, they're not African American, and they're not Middle Eastern. So as Amazigh people or Berber people, we'd like to have our own classification, and there are some other countries that are in Africa, they're not from North Africa, and like in the Middle Central Africa, and they are not Arabs, they're not Middle Eastern, and we should not include that. The Amazigh population or community is large and big in the United States, in America, and I'd rather have Berber or Amazigh American as term, like African American, Kurdish American. This will be helpful for us. Thank you.
Okay, that's good comments. And so that's a great example of a great feedback that we want to hear from you. So this leads to my feedback for you, questions I have for you. So what nationalities and ethnicities should be added or removed from our working classification on the Middle Eastern North African category? So that's one question I have for you right now. And then, are there other classifications within this population that we should consider? So for example, if we did not have a MENA category, is there another classification that you would recommend? I think I've heard some of it already over there, but keep that in mind as we ask for this feedback.
All right, I have some comments and questions, please. First, I would like to know, where did you find these participants who answered about the classification, like the map we saw? The second thing, the Bedouin are just a group of people. It's not race or ethnicity. It's a group of people who live in the desert, who live outside of the city. They can be everywhere worldwide, not just in Africa or Middle East. So that's the second thing. And the third thing, the Arab League is political, so they included other countries to make themselves powerful, and I've been fighting for 4 years now to get my country out of there, because we're Amazigh, we're not Arabs, we don't want to be included in the Arab League, but we're not here to talk about that today. And I just wanted to tell you that the invasion did that. So, and for the countries that I would like to be excluded, Armenian, Azerbaijan, Comoran, Cypriot, Djiboutian, Georgian, and Maltese, because they are nowhere near North Africa or Middle East.
Okay.
Thank
All right,
you.
so thank you for your feedback. Again, that's why we had the feedback forums. And I want to reemphasize again that, again, it's about the U.S. experience. And third, I'm going to answer your first question. So where do we identify the organizations? Where do we come up with the classifications? This was research that we've done over the last 2 years, contacting these organizations, doing, internet research, me personally going to these organizations and talking to them. These are the organizations right up here on the slides right here, the ones that I mentioned. And so that's where we found the classifications from. These are the 15 organizations that actually had a classification for this MENA region. So going back to Helen's, concern is that, we were very strict in the sense that we only wanted to identify organizations that actually even offered a classification. There were many organizations that mentioned MENA. As you said, it is popular. You're right, it is written a lot in the literature, but no one defines it. Most of the time, they do not define it. So where does the Middle East start? Where does it end? And so we struggled with that. So this is where we started. This is where the Census Bureau started with. Okay? All right. So back this way, right? Over here. Am I missing any? Sorry, Joseph?
Sorry, just as a quick emphasis, I had a question in terms of the total population of North Africa versus the Middle East. The reason I say that is because a lot of, in terms of group, coming here in terms of Amazigh, a lot of people left, even as you mentioned, they left their countries and came to the United States or Europe because there was more kind of freedom to have their own identity than in their own country. So that's important in terms of the American experience. And I think if I disagree with the MENA, especially again, Middle East or North Africa, I think they should be separate just because of the power dynamic, versus the Arab League, the historical consequences, they're still taking effect. So I don't think we should push them together just because there's so much tension. It just brings up conflict. So I think, it's good to have those categories, Middle East, North Africa, but they should be separate categories. And if you do have that combination, I think diversifying it, adding more countries like, Chad, Niger, Mali, because, the borders, people in terms of the Tuareg groups, as well as, Iran in the Middle East as well. So the more diversity, the more we diffuse the ethnic issue. And just as a small, in terms of the Amazigh Berber, I prefer just the Amazigh, not the Berber, because it's discriminatory.
Okay, thank you for your comment. So,
what I have just described are just examples of types of tabulations that could be possible from the 2020 census when we collect data for detailed Middle Eastern or North African groups. Now, once again, we want to hear from you, and we have a few questions to help you guide the discussion. And these are, how much and what kind of detailed data do you want to see in the new data products? What type of data do you currently look but cannot find? And what types of cross-tabulations do you want to see with the Middle Eastern and North African data? And what do you like about the current ACS ancestry data products? So once again, we'll just place your placards and we'll start our discussion. This side? I don't remember.
So this also connects to just before the break. I think it would be helpful, for instance, to have in terms of like how that statistic was was conducted in terms of, if we're talking about Morocco, what makes people identify as Arab? For instance, genetically, they're not, the majority are Amazigh, but it's the language. So that's very problematic. So in terms of how much detail, it would be helpful to have in terms of also language. And just because I think I'm looking at the list, I'm not even seeing I'm not even seeing like kind of the group that we're representing. It's not even on the list there.
Right now, that's a great point. The groups that are on the current proposed tabulation, and again, I remind you, it's proposed or potential. It's based on our current working definition, and that's why we're missing some of the groups that we've been discussing today here. So that's exactly what we need. We need your feedback saying, you know what, we think you should add this or this other group into your tabulation. So once again, fill the feedback sheet, and we would really appreciate that.
Okay, indeed, just in terms of the last category, so there's Arab, there's Middle Eastern, and there's North African. So just going back again, reiterate, I think the reason I bring this up again and again is that because I feel like there's not really true inclusion in that, having Arab there's also, when in this room there are, Kurdish, Copts, how many Israelis, how many Turkish in Amazigh, and then there's an Arab as a category. So I think it's very problematic that we go, I know that we're trying not to discuss politics, but it's very important to have, that clear definition, or else it's just.
And I understand. So the groups that we have, as I mentioned, are from the working definition, and then the ones we have under the other Middle Eastern or North African categories, it's what we were discussing earlier today. These are the generic or general terms that people are reporting, and that's why they're included in this table. And similarly is following the pattern that we use for the Hispanic. So for Hispanic, we have Puerto Rican, Mexican, Cuban. We have all the groups, and then we have other Hispanic, which are the people who say Hispanic or just some general terms regarding that. So again, these are just potential tabulations, but it's not necessarily how we have it. But then we do have respondents that say, I'm just Arab, I'm Middle Eastern, I'm North African. So we still capture that information. And that's why a lot of these times these groups have such large numbers, but because we're getting people that are identifying in that form. Next. In the right end. Just as for a Hispanic, when you look at the race data, the largest race that they identify with is Mexican, Hispanic, or Latinos are among the top three.
All right. I saw that we have Algerian and Berber listed in this, and I just wanted to make sure that everybody knows that Algerian is a nationality and Berber is a race. So it's different. I wanted to know, how are you choosing those terms and how are you making this list? Whoever put this, did they know what Algerian means and what Berber means and what other thing means? Because we are mixing up things here.
Linda?
You already made this point, but I really want to reiterate it because it could really get messy. It's already messy. We got to take the politics out of the conversation, and that doesn't mean that we as communities need to not talk about this and have these difficult dialogues. I mean, we go through this all the time within our own communities every day. We talk about anti-black racism within Arab communities. I mean, these are discussions that happen all the time. We talk about what's happening on the other side of the world. It's just not helpful for what we're trying to do right here. And I also want to make sure as we're making recommendations that you guys are verifying some of the recommendations that are coming to you, because I'm from New York City and I work with a very large North African community, and Berbers are not a race. For example, they are very racially diverse. There are black Berbers, there are light-skinned Berbers, right? So Berber is more of an ethnicity or a shared common language, for example, that's different than Arabic, right? So we need to make sure that as we're giving recommendations, that we're also not giving incorrect information that then is implemented in a way that doesn't actually align with the actual communities that are out in the communities that we're going to try to have this happen. And the other thing I want to say, and it's not because I'm Arab, but I want to also make the point that when we're talking about MENA, there are 23 Arab countries, right? There's a big, vast group of people that we're talking about, not to say that they are the most important group, but making sure that we're also engaging the minorities within those 23 Arab countries, which are part of what we're talking about. So I'm trying to figure out how we get to a common place or a place of common ground where we're looking at MENA not as what people identify, but if I'm, Assyrian or as an Assyrian, not Syrian, anyway, or Chaldean, for example, that people see that that's reflected and not to be blinded by this, this thing called MENA that they don't like connect to, but then there's another category that you do connect to. So I'm just worried about this all or nothing kind of situation that we get into. We have something that I think is very robust. There's been a lot of work, and I just want to give homage where it's due. I mean, people like Helen have been doing this for 30 years. I mean, we can't just break down a building that someone has built over the past 30 years. So I think just having a more thoughtful conversation, thinking about the work that has gone from the government side, but also from the community side, and trying to come to a place of common ground. I'm not hearing that much common ground happening, and I'm worried that this conversation went a different direction. I'm sure you knew it was going to be messy, and you probably had this with other communities. But can we not do what's happening, the mess that's happening on the other side of the world? Can we be the example where we actually figure out a way to work together, make sure people are represented, minorities feel that we're upholding them, but we're moving forward. So I'm worried that we're not going in that direction based on the observations here.
Thank you very much for the forum. I would like to ask the expert here not to categorize us in their papers, whatever research, as sub-ethnic groups. We are an ethnic group, so not as a minority or sub-ethnic group. We are a group in the Middle East and a large group in the Middle East, so it's in a way very offensive. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I talk about the Kurds. So.
Okay, so then we'll end with the last two questions over there.
No, I just wanted to actually really thank you. In as much as the conversation was tense, I think it's helpful, especially to just show what the communities, the tension between that. I think it's very helpful to actually see that and to hear the different conversations. So my apologies for any, unintended offense, but I think it's really important how deeply it matters to each one, whether it's Arab or Amazigh or Kurdish, how this is really a huge, deep issue, in that it's important to have these types of conversations as heated as they were.
No, that's fine. In fact, that was the purpose, remember. That's what we asked, the feedback. And which is why we started out by saying, look, we're not seeking 100% consensus. We want your feedback. And that's what we had today. In fact, honestly, I thought it went really, really well today. So, no worries. I could tell everyone in here is just as passionate as I am. So, yes, we'll end with one last comment or question.
Okay, I just wanted to thank you for having us today and for this very fruitful debate and forum. And I wish and hope that North Africa will be separated and kept away from Middle East. Please, 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 it's very important to our community and for the Amazigh population. Thank you so much.
We certainly will review and consider all feedback that comes in. Thank you very much.